The vast, desolate landscape of Orith Prime stretched endlessly under a sky tinged with deep crimson. Commander Zara Kane stood at the edge of a towering cliff, her cybernetic eye scanning the horizon. The once flourishing world now lay in ruins, a graveyard of shattered cities and broken dreams. Her mission was simple yet insurmountable. Retrieve the relic of Lumerus, an artifact said to hold the key to humanity's survival. But Zara knew she wasn't alone. The enemy was always watching, waiting. Behind her, the vanguard team prepared for the descent into the abyss. Sergeant Dax, a grizzled veteran with a prosthetic arm, checked his plasma rifle. "Commander, you think the stories about this relic are true?" he asked, his voice laced with skepticism. Zara didn't turn. "It doesn't matter if they're true," she replied, her tone cold and measured. "What matters is that the Zarn believe in it. If they get their claws on it, humanity doesn't stand a chance." The Zarn, a ruthless alien empire bent on domination, had already conquered dozens of human colonies. Orith Prime was their latest conquest, and the relic was rumored to be hidden in its depths. Zara's team had one chance to retrieve it, or Earth itself would fall. The wind howled, carrying with it the faint echo of Zarn war horns. Zara clenched her fists. "Let's move. Time isn't on our side." As they descended the cliffside, the ground trembled beneath their boots. The team moved in tight formation, their helmets scanning for heat signatures. The ruins of Orith Prime loomed around them like ancient sentinels, silent witnesses to the carnage that had unfolded here. They reached the entrance to an underground temple, its massive doors carved with intricate glyphs that glowed faintly in the dim light. Zara gestured for silence, her hand tightening around the hilt of her energy blade. "Stay sharp. The Zarn aren't the only danger here." The air grew colder as they ventured inside, the oppressive silence broken only by the faint hum of their equipment. The temple's corridors were a labyrinth of crumbling stone and flickering light. Each step felt like an intrusion, as if the shadows themselves were watching. Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the chamber. Dax raised his rifle, his eyes narrowing. "We've got company." Out of the darkness, a pack of shadow beasts emerged, their eyes glowing like embers. These creatures were native to Orith Prime, twisted remnants of its original ecosystem. They moved with predatory grace, their claws scraping against the stone. "Hold the line," Zara commanded, activating her energy blade. The room erupted into chaos as the beasts attacked. Plasma bolts lit up the darkness, and the air filled with the acrid smell of burning flesh. Zara moved like a whirlwind, her blade slicing through the shadow beast with surgical precision. One beast lunged at her, its jaws snapping inches from her face. Zara drove her blade through its chest, the creature collapsing with a guttural screech. She turned to see Dax pinned beneath another beast, its claws tearing at his armor. "Get off him!" Zara roared, charging forward. She drove her blade into the beast's spine, pulling Dax to his feet. "You good?" "Yeah," he grunted, his prosthetic arm sparking. "Just a scratch." The team regrouped, their breaths heavy. The corpses of shadow beasts littered the chamber, their blood seeping into the cracks of the stone floor. Zara wiped her blade clean and gestured toward a massive door at the far end of the room. "That's our way forward," she said, her voice steady. "Let's move." They pushed open the door, revealing a cavernous chamber illuminated by a soft, otherworldly glow. At its center stood the relic of Lumerus, a crystalline orb suspended in midair. Its light pulsed rhythmically, casting eerie shadows across the walls. Zara stepped forward cautiously, her instincts screaming that something was wrong. The air was thick with tension, and every fiber of her being told her they were walking into a trap. "Commander, look out!" Dax shouted. The floor beneath them erupted, and Zarn warriors poured into the chamber, their armor gleaming like obsidian. At their head was a towering figure, General Falrex, a Zarn commander infamous for his brutality. "So the humans finally crawl out of their holes," Falrex sneered, his voice a deep rumble. But you're too late. The relic belongs to us now. Zara raised her blade, her cybernetic eye locking onto Thalrex. Over my dead body, she spat. Thalrex grinned, his claws flexing. That can be arranged. The battle erupted with ferocious intensity. Plasma bolts and energy blades clashed in a symphony of destruction. Zara engaged Thalrex directly, their blades sparking as they collided. His strength was overwhelming, but Zara's speed and precision kept her in the fight. "Dax, cover me!" she shouted, narrowly dodging a strike that would have taken her head off. Dax unleashed a barrage of plasma fire, forcing the Zarn warriors to scatter. But their numbers were overwhelming, and the vanguard team was quickly being pushed back. As Thalrex lunged at Zara, she sidestepped and delivered a brutal strike to his midsection. Sparks flew, but his armor held. He retaliated with a backhanded blow that sent her sprawling across the chamber. Zara gritted her teeth, blood trickling from her lip. She couldn't afford to lose. Not here. Not now. "Commander, we've got to retreat," Dax yelled, his voice strained. "No," Zara growled, forcing herself to her feet. Her eyes locked onto the relic. "We finished this." Zara wiped the blood from her mouth and surged forward with renewed determination. Every step felt like a battle within itself, but she couldn't falter. The relic shimmered tantalizingly, a beacon of hope amidst the chaos. Around her, the vanguard team fought valiantly against the onslaught of Zarn warriors. Dax was a whirlwind of plasma fire and grit, while Specialist Lyra, the team's tech expert, hacked into a nearby console, attempting to activate the chamber's defenses. "Lyra, how much longer?" Zara shouted, deflecting another strike from Thalrex's blade. 2 minutes, Commander," Lyra replied, her fingers flying over the console's interface. "But we might not have that long." Zara knew she had to buy time. She pivoted on her heel, her energy blade humming as she parried Thalrex's relentless attacks. His movements were precise, calculated, and devastatingly powerful. It was like fighting a storm made flesh. "You're strong, human," Thalrex growled, his voice dripping with disdain. "But strength without purpose is meaningless." "Funny," Zara shot back, dodging a brutal swing. "I was just about to say the same thing." She saw an opening and lunged, her blade slicing through the weak joint in his armor. Thalrex roared in pain, staggering back. The brief reprieve gave her a moment to regroup. "Dax, cover Lyra. We need those defenses up," Zara barked. Dax nodded, throwing himself into the fray with reckless abandon. He slammed his prosthetic arm into a Zarn warrior, sending it sprawling, before unloading a flurry of plasma shots into another. "Come on, you ugly bastards. Is that all you've got?" The Zarn didn't relent. More poured into the chamber, their guttural war cries echoing off the walls. The vanguard team was being overwhelmed, and Zara could see the cracks forming in their defense. Lyra let out a triumphant shout. "Got it. Activating defenses now." The chamber shuddered as ancient mechanisms roared to life. Turrets emerged from the walls, unleashing a hail of plasma fire on the Zarn. The tide of battle shifted instantly as the automated defenses cut through the enemy ranks. Zara allowed herself a brief moment of relief before turning her focus back to Thalrex. The Zarn general was wounded but far from defeated. His eyes burned with fury as he charged at her, his blade raised high. Their blades clashed again, the force of the impact sending shockwaves through the chamber. Zara fought with everything she had, each strike fueled by the lives depending on her. But Thalrex was relentless, and she could feel her strength waning. "You can't win, human," Thalrex taunted, his blade pressing against hers. "Your kind is weak, destined to be extinguished." Zara gritted her teeth, pushing back with every ounce of strength she could muster. "We're not weak. We're survivors." With a surge of adrenaline, she broke free from the clash and delivered a devastating strike to Thalrex's leg. The Zarn general stumbled, his armor sparking. Zara didn't hesitate. She lunged forward, driving her blade deep into his chest. Thalrex let out a guttural roar, his body convulsing as the energy blade pierced through him. Zara twisted the blade for good measure before pulling it free. The Zarn general collapsed to his knees, his eyes narrowing as he glared up at her. "This isn't over," he rasped, blood dripping from his mouth. "The Zarn will never stop." Zara stared at him coldly. "Neither will we." With a final swing, she decapitated him, ending the battle. The chamber fell silent except for the hum of the relic. Zara turned to her team, who were battered but alive. "Is everyone okay?" Dax nodded, his face smeared with blood and sweat. "Barely, but yeah, we're good." "Commander," Lyra called, her voice trembling. "The relic. It's reacting to you." Zara approached the relic cautiously, her heart pounding. The crystalline orb pulsed faster as she drew near, its light enveloping her. She reached out, her fingers brushing against its surface. The world around her dissolved in an explosion of light. Visions flooded her mind. Images of Earth, humanity's struggles, and the Zarn's merciless advance. But there was more. The relic wasn't just a tool. It was alive, a sentient force with the power to change the course of the war. When the light faded, Zara found herself back in the chamber, the relic now a part of her. Its energy coursed through her veins, filling her with a strength she'd never known. "Commander?" Dax asked, his voice hesitant. Zara turned to him, her eyes glowing faintly with the relic's energy. "We have what we came for. Let's finish this." The journey back to the Vanguard's extraction point was a race against time. With Thalrex dead, the Zarn forces had descended into chaos, but their ferocity hadn't diminished. The team moved quickly through the labyrinthine corridors of the ancient structure, their movements coordinated and precise despite the weight of exhaustion bearing down on them. "Zara," Dax called out, his voice strained as he fired at a group of pursuing Zarn. "Whatever that relic did to you back there, it better be worth it." "It is," Zara replied, her voice calm but resolute. The energy from the relic coursed through her like a steady flame, sharpening her senses and bolstering her strength. Every step felt lighter, every movement more deliberate. "Just keep moving. We're almost there." The team burst into an open courtyard, where their dropship hovered in the distance, its engines roaring. But between them and salvation stood a final wave of Zarn warriors, larger and more heavily armed than before. "Hold the line," Zara commanded, raising her blade. "We're not losing anyone today." Dax and Lyra took up defensive positions, their weapons blazing as they covered Zara's advance. She charged headfirst into the enemy ranks, her blade a blur of energy and light. The relic's power amplified her every strike, making her an unstoppable force. The Zarn warriors, though formidable, fell one after another under her assault. "Zara, we've got incoming," Lyra shouted, pointing to the sky. A Zarn warship descended from the clouds, its massive cannons charging. The ground trembled as it unleashed a devastating barrage, scattering the team and sending debris flying in all directions. Zara pushed herself to her feet, her ears ringing. The warship loomed above, its weapons preparing for another attack. She knew they wouldn't survive another strike. "Lyra, can you disable that thing?" Zara asked, her voice urgent. "Not from here," Lyra replied, coughing as she climbed out of the rubble. "But if I can get close enough, I might be able to overload its core." Zara nodded. "Then we'll get you there." The team regrouped and pressed forward, using the rubble as cover to avoid the warship's relentless fire. Zara led the charge, carving a path through the remaining Zarn warriors with ruthless efficiency. Every swing of her blade was precise, every movement fueled by the relic's energy. They reached the warship's base, where Lyra quickly set to work. Dax and Zara stood guard, fending off the relentless waves of Zarn trying to stop them. Almost there, Lyra called out, her voice frantic. Just a few more seconds. A Zarn brute charged at Zara, its massive frame blocking out the light. She braced herself, her blade meeting its enormous axe in a clash that sent sparks flying. The brute was stronger than any enemy she'd faced so far, its blows relentless and overpowering. "Zara, look out!" Dax shouted, firing at the brute to distract it. Zara seized the opportunity, dodging the brute's next swing and driving her blade into its exposed side. The creature roared in pain but didn't fall. With a final, desperate surge of strength, she leaped onto its back and plunged her blade deep into its neck. The brute collapsed, its body convulsing before going still. "Done!" Lyra shouted. "Get clear!" The team sprinted away as the warship's core overloaded. A deafening explosion rocked the courtyard, engulfing the warship in a fiery blaze. The shockwave knocked them off their feet, but they were alive. The dropship descended, its ramp lowering to pick them up. Zara helped Lyra to her feet, her own body aching from the battle. They boarded the ship just as another wave of Zarn appeared on the horizon. "Go, go, go!" Zara shouted to the pilot. The dropship lifted off, leaving the battlefield behind. As they ascended into the sky, Zara looked out at the devastation below. The Zarn forces were still out there, still a threat. But for the first time in a long time, she felt hope. Dax slumped into a seat, his face a mixture of exhaustion and relief. "So, what now, Commanders?" Zara glanced at the relic, which pulsed faintly in her hand. "Now, we finish this war." The relic's faint pulse was a steady reminder of the responsibilities Zara now carried. Back at the Vanguard base, the debriefing was intense. Every officer, scientist, and strategist wanted a piece of her time. The relic was unlike anything they had ever encountered. Its energy readings defied explanation, and its potential as a weapon was undeniable. "Commander Zara," General Kale said, his tone firm but tinged with respect, "this relic could turn the tide of the war. But it's also dangerous. We need to understand its full capabilities before we deploy it again." Zara nodded, her face a mask of calm, though inside she wrestled with uncertainty. The power she had felt during the battle was intoxicating, but it had come with a price. She had seen flashes, visions of a time long past, of civilizations rising and falling, all tied to the relic. "General," she replied, "I agree. But the Zarn won't wait for us to figure it out. We need to stay ahead of them." Kale studied her for a moment before sighing. "You've always had good instincts, Zara. Just don't let this power consume you." Zara's team was given a brief reprieve to recover, but it wasn't long before they were called back into action. Recon reports indicated that the Zarn were regrouping, their forces converging on a massive fortress deep within enemy territory. This was their stronghold, the heart of their war machine. As the dropship carried them toward the mission, Zara addressed her team. "We've come too far to back down now. This fortress is their lifeline. If we take it out, we cripple their ability to wage war." Dax smirked. "No pressure, huh?" Lyra, ever the pragmatist, chimed in. "Just tell me the plan, and I'll make sure it works." "The plan," Zara said, her voice steady, "is to win, whatever it takes." They infiltrated the fortress under cover of night, using the terrain to avoid detection. Inside, the corridors were dark and cold, the walls adorned with alien symbols that seemed to hum with latent energy. The relic in Zara's possession began to react, its pulse growing stronger. "This place is alive," Lyra whispered, her voice tinged with awe and fear. "Focus," Zara replied. "We're not here to admire the scenery." The team moved deeper into the fortress, encountering resistance at every turn. The Zarn were relentless, their warriors throwing themselves into battle with a ferocity that bordered on desperation. As they approached the central chamber, the relic's energy became overwhelming. Zara felt its pull, as if it was guiding her towards something. The visions returned, more vivid than before. She saw a massive structure, a machine of unimaginable power, buried beneath the fortress. "This is it," she said, her voice trembling. "The source of their strength." "What are you talking about?" Dax asked, glancing at her with concern. "The relic," Zara explained. "It's connected to whatever's down there. If we destroy it, we end the war." The team descended into the depths of the fortress, following the relic's guidance. The air grew thick with an otherworldly energy, and the walls seemed to pulse in rhythm with the relic. They entered a massive cavern, where a colossal machine stood at the center, its surface covered in glowing runes. "This is it," Zara said, her voice barely a whisper. The machine was unlike anything they had ever seen. It hummed with power, its energy coursing through the fortress like veins in a living organism. It was clear that this was the heart of the Zarn's operation. "How do we destroy something like this?" Dax asked, his voice filled with doubt. Zara held up the relic. With this, the relic began to glow brighter, its energy resonating with the machine. Zara felt a surge of power, her body almost overwhelmed by the force. She knew what she had to do. "Get to a safe distance," she ordered her team. "What?" Dax exclaimed. "You're not seriously thinking of doing this alone, are you?" "There's no other way," Zara replied, her voice firm. "This relic is the key. If I can channel its energy into the machine, I can destroy it from within." Lyra grabbed her arm. "You don't have to do this, Zara. There has to be another way." "There isn't," Zara said, pulling away. "This is my choice." Her team reluctantly retreated, their expressions a mix of fear and admiration. Zara stepped closer to the machine, the relic in her hand glowing brighter with each step. The energy was almost unbearable, but she pushed forward, her determination unshakable. As she reached the machine, the relic's energy began to merge with it. The runes on its surface flared to life, and the entire cavern shook with the force of their connection. Zara felt her consciousness slipping, her mind overwhelmed by the flood of memories and power. She saw the history of the Zarn, their rise and fall, their desperation to survive. She saw the cost of their war, the lives lost on both sides. And she saw the future, a future where peace was possible, but only if she succeeded. With a final surge of strength, Zara unleashed the relic's energy. The machine erupted in a blinding explosion of light, the force of it shaking the fortress to its core. The explosion rippled through the cavern, and for a moment, everything was silent. Zara felt herself falling, her senses dulled as the energy drained from her body. The relic, now dim and lifeless, slipped from her grasp. Her team rushed back into the chamber, their faces pale with fear and desperation. "Zara," Dax shouted, his voice echoing through the cavern. Lyra reached her first, kneeling beside her. "She's alive," she said, her voice trembling. But barely. The machine was gone, reduced to rubble, and with it, the Zarn's lifeline. The fortress began to collapse, the ground shaking violently as the energy that had powered it dissipated. "We have to move," Dax yelled, helping Lyra lift Zara. They navigated the crumbling corridors, the walls collapsing around them. Every step was a struggle, but they refused to leave Zara behind. As they emerged from the fortress, the night sky was alight with the glow of distant explosions. The Zarn forces were in disarray, their coordinated efforts unraveling without the machine's guidance. They reached the dropship just as the fortress collapsed entirely, a massive plume of dust and debris rising into the air. Inside the ship, Zara's condition worsened. Her body was weak, her breath shallow. "Stay with us, Zara," Lyra whispered, her voice breaking. Zara's eyes fluttered open, a faint smile on her lips. "We did it," she said, her voice barely audible. Back at the Vanguard base, Zara was rushed to the medical wing. Days passed as her team waited anxiously, refusing to leave her side. Finally, the doctors emerged with news. "She's stable," they said, "but she's in a coma. We don't know if she'll wake up." The war against the Zarn began to shift in the Vanguard's favor. With their stronghold destroyed, the alien forces were scattered and leaderless. Months passed and peace talks began, an unthinkable prospect before Zara's sacrifice. Zara's team visited her every day, sharing updates and stories, hoping that she could hear them. The relic, now inert, was placed in a secure facility for further study. Scientists and historians debated its origins and purpose, but none could deny the role it had played in turning the tide of the war. One day, as Lyra recounted a particularly amusing story about Dax's clumsy attempt to flirt with a medic, Zara's fingers twitched. "Did you see that?" Lyra exclaimed, grabbing Dax's arm. "See what?" She moved. They called for the doctors, who confirmed that Zara's vitals were improving. Days later, she opened her eyes. Her recovery was slow, but her spirit remained strong. The first thing she asked about was her team and the progress of the war. "You saved us, Zara," General Kale told her during a visit. "The galaxy owes you a debt it can never repay." As Zara regained her strength, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. The relic had changed her, not just physically but emotionally. It had shown her the interconnectedness of all life, the cost of war, and the value of peace. Though the war was ending, Zara knew her mission wasn't over. The relic had been a tool of destruction, but it also held the potential for healing and unity. She vowed to dedicate her life to ensuring that its power was never misused again. Years later, Zara stood on the steps of the newly formed Galactic Council, a symbol of unity between once warring factions. She had become a legend, a beacon of hope and resilience. The relic, now enshrined in a museum, served as a reminder of the sacrifices made to achieve peace. As she gazed at the stars, Zara felt a sense of fulfillment. The galaxy was no longer divided, and she had played a part in its healing. The burden of the relic was no longer hers alone. It was a shared legacy, a testament to the strength of those who dared to dream of a better future. Nathan's breathing steadied as he observed Carr, who was now recovering from the intense battle. The arena was alive with the sound of alien voices cheering, their admiration for the human warrior evident in their applause. Carr had been defeated, but the respect he had for Nathan was undeniable. "Human," Carr spoke, his voice deep with both grudging respect and weariness, "you have fought with the heart of a true warrior. No one has ever challenged me like you have. You have earned more than just victory. You have earned my respect and that of the entire Galactic Commandos." Nathan nodded silently, his chest still heaving from the exertion. He had accomplished what no human before him had, and it wasn't just about winning the battle. It was about sending a message to the galaxy that Earth was not to be underestimated. His eyes met Carr's, and for a moment there was no animosity between them. Just two warriors who had fought for their honor, their people, and their pride. The crowd was still roaring, the sound deafening. Nathan turned to face them, raising his arms in acknowledgement. The victory was his, but it was also a victory for Earth, a small, seemingly insignificant planet in the grand scheme of the galaxy. Yet now it was known. It was respected. As the energy fields around the arena began to fade, signaling the end of the combat, Nathan's thoughts briefly drifted back to his home, to Earth. He had fought for his planet, for the people he loved, and now the message had been sent. The Galactic Commandos were no longer invincible. The pride of the galaxy had been broken by one human soldier. The victory was more than personal. It was a triumph for all of humanity. But for Nathan Carter, this was just the beginning.